the nature of chaos? What is the place unbounded by the laws and customs of a continent ruled by tyrants, locked in petty squabbles? In the 16th and 17th century, this place was America. The hopes and dreams of thousands of people were underwritten simply because of their birth. For these people, all they were looking for was a fresh start. It seemed fitting that the early colonies in America were founded on religious persecution and greed. It wasn't until England looked to the American colonies as a supplemental source of income that we began to matter. Colonists, upset with English tax laws, began to make their sentiment heard by dumping tea into the Boston Harbor and stringing up English officials. Eventually, tensions rose up until a mob in Boston began harassing a group of soldiers, enough for them to open fire on the crowd. It would be known as the Boston Massacre. If the soldiers were to be tried in the colony, it seems their fate would be sealed. That is, until they asked a man named John Adams to represent them. John Adams was split on whether to take this case. Living in Boston, he was against the soldiers being there at all. But, as a man of principle, he knew justice needed to be done, which is why he chose to represent the soldiers. John Adams had a cynical view of human nature from his studies at Harvard. He believed that men should be bound by law and order so that society could function. His stance was much more conservative than his peers. John Adams in court would do an excellent job representing the soldiers, convincing the jury that the soldiers acted in self-defense. Making a name for himself as an orator and a loyal subject, John Adams is offered a government position but declines for a number of reasons, including the British government's response to colonial actions. The trial did not dissuade Boston of its anti-British sentiments, and soon after, an event known as the Boston Tea Party occurs, where almost $500,000 worth of tea is dumped into the Boston Harbor. It is not long after the Boston Tea Party that the English pass what are called the Intolerable Acts, which the colonists take heavy disregard and distaste to. To the colonists, they were being denied their natural rights as English citizens. These actions caused the citizens of Massachusetts to create a committee of correspondence and to vote on officials to attend a Continental Congress. Skeptical of the legal basis of a Continental Congress, John Adams puts his feelings aside and decides to go anyway. It is at this point that King George III declares any person who goes to this Congress to be committing acts of treason, and the punishment for treason is death. This was very unifying for the American cause. The first battle of the war began in Lexington and Concord, and would soon expand. The Battle of Bunker Hill and subsequent British evacuation of Boston was a sign that the Americans had a fighting chance in this conflict. John Adams does much work in the war committees of Congress to make sure his troops are well supplied, well fed, and ready to fight. It's a very difficult position, and he oftentimes felt unappreciated. At this point in the war, the United States needed international support in order to fend off the British, as the British had a almost unstoppable navy and a highly trained army. It was quite obvious that the Americans needed the support of France and other European nations to achieve their independence. Adams had no experience as a diplomat, but Congress decided he would be a great candidate to represent the new United American States. Adams had an interesting time of being a diplomat, and thanks to a number of issues, he was reassigned to the Netherlands. It was there he learned the end of the war and wrote to Congress asking for orders. He would eventually be reassigned to re-establish relations with Great Britain before being recalled home. He would eventually be nominated by Massachusetts and many other northern states to be vice president and then president. So this begs the question, What makes a president? Although there is no simple answer to that, it appears all presidents in American history have founded their legacies before they ever stepped into the Oval Office. What makes Adams unique is the fact that he built the office both literally and metaphorically, taking liberties that were not explicitly defined in the Constitution. It is clear we live in America that George Washington, Alexander Hamilton, and John Adams set out to achieve, and not one that Jefferson, Jackson, and many other populist forces sought to make. Whether we like it or not, the federal government is here to stay and cannot be dismantled by one branch. To Adams, there is a danger from all men. The only maxim of a free government ought to be to trust no man living with power to endanger the public liberty. And he also believed that America should be a government of laws and not of men. There's something uniquely Roman about his attitude, and why wouldn't there be? He saw how the masses helped take Rome apart from the inside out, and to Adams, the only way to prevent this was to make a government a body of institutions that checked one another's power. This was so difficult to do, considering the strength he saw in nations in Europe, but he understood the value of American ideals, and to him, American ideals were to elect few among us who knew much about policy, diplomacy, warfare, and other subjects. From all this, John Adams has created an answer to the question about what it means to be an American. A famous French aristocrat once said, "There is in fact a manly and legitimate passion for equality that spurs all men to wish to be strong and esteemed. This passion tends to elevate the lesser to the rank of the greater, but one also finds in the human heart a depraved taste for equality, which impels the weak to want to bring the strong down to their level, and which reduces men to preferring equality in servitude to inequality in freedom." So what does this mean to you as an American? It means you vote, you participate in a free and open political discussion, and you respect your fellow citizens' pursuit of success. Whether he makes it or not, it's his right, and it's your right too.